Aloha and welcome to RedTime Stories. I'm your host, Tamara McKay, and we're here to share stories and talk about things that have to do with life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness while protecting our First Amendment rights. Thank you for tuning in for another episode to RedTime Stories. Last week we had a guest from Louisiana, Rusty Spindell, and now this week we are happy to talk story with a talk story session with Dr. Trey Penny from Texas. It was really great to have him as a guest with the Maui County GOP and have him available to tell some truth, where he stands, and answer some questions. I really hope that you enjoy our talk as much as I did. He is supported by Rudy Giuliani as well as President Donald Trump. He's a veteran and the executive director of the National Fallen Officers Foundation. But before we begin, I want to make a reminder to remind you that if you have any content or questions, please send them to me at writeasred@pm.com. That's writeasred@pm.com. We're going to keep talking story with real people, with real stories, and putting some rumors to rest and combating corruption in our country. So without further ado, let's get started and hear from our talk story session with Dr. Trey Penny. He's a great guy to have spoken to. I think he will do well. I wish him lots of luck, and I believe that Penny makes more sense. So please enjoy.
Look, I want people to hear the real stories that's going on in this country. Here was, what our congressional leaders are not doing, unfortunately.
And that's what we love. That's what we love. We want to hear the truth because over here in Hawaii, we're such a blue state. And so I was just talking to Rusty Spindell. He's a friend. He went from Vegas, which now they have a Republican governor. Now he's in Louisiana and the House is red, but the governor is blue. And then he went back and forth to Florida as well. So, we have a lot of challenges here in Hawaii, and it's so important that we hear from people like you to tell the truth, the hardcore truth, no editing, unfiltered truth, So,
well, I'm gonna tell you about it here in a little bit, but I do want, as being conservatives and being Republicans, I want people to understand that the world is evolving around us, and we have to be able to not really shift with the world, but make sure that we are monitoring that there is a changing demographic, there's a changing dynamic that we're having to deal with, and if we want to reach our younger generation. We better come up with to find ways to reach these guys where they are, because they're not living in that. This is not our grandparents' Republican Party. The dynamics are changing, and these young people, they don't see our world the way we see it, especially from the religious standpoint. Look, I'm a college professor, so I can talk to you. Talk to you a lot about the things that we're bringing into the party that would not. Intended to be a part of the Republican Party, as it relates to constitutional conservatism. We can, I can talk to you about this stuff all day long, but we have to be smart. A lot of young people are not in the church, so you can't reach them with that kind of message. So, how unfortunate it is, I think we just have to be smart enough to know that there's a moving dynamic, and we got to find a shift to get those people. If we plan on winning elections, we don't plan on winning elections, then keep the status quo, keep doing what you're doing. Right.
People say that they're turned off because they see that there's a lot of infighting within the Republican Party. But I'm hearing from a lot of people that I in contact with on the mainland who are starting to experience the same thing. What we're finding is it's not really a lot of infighting, but it's a lot of us fighting with the infiltration that is happening within the Republican Party. Do you see that? And what can we do about that?
Look, I think there are some ideological issues. And I do get your point, but idealistically, there are some issues within the party. We do have. I tell people all the time there are almost like two parties within itself. Because we have we've taken in a lot of stuff that we haven't traditionally accepted, right? If you think back to the early 90s, the Republican Party was always the party of common sense, always the party of we're going to be the higher standard. We're not going to stoop to the level of the Democrats. And we've seen in recent years that we've become just as idealistic as some of the Democrats. We're a lot of our rhetoric is let's fight, let's fight, let's fight. Well, that hadn't traditionally been the Republican Party on that level, right? We would have never really had a lot of this stuff, but for and I'll talk to you about this in a little bit. Is more so the shift in ideological thinking because of social media, and that's a really big influence. I mean, you gotta, I gotta wait till everybody get on, but I want to tell you this whole story so you can kind of follow where I'm going with this, because it's we do have a Republican Party. Look, we're strong Republicans in Texas. We fight like cats and dogs during the primary, but get to the general, we come together. But then after we get into office, our policies shift again. And the reason I'm going to talk to you about that is because I went through it. You got to think 3 years of fighting for policy to protect law enforcement just to end up at square one after it was all said and done. Look, I'm somewhat disheartened by it, but I want you guys to understand. I want to kind of give that educational piece so you can use it and go and fight for our interests. Our country means more. For somebody like me, it means the world to me to have the opportunity I have now, because look, this is the greatest country in the world, and I mean greatest nation in the world. And we have to make sure that people know it. We have to represent the country's interests at all costs.
Yeah. Do you feel that 2024 is like our last hope, our last hurrah, and what can we do to ensure that our country is still going to be here past then? Or is that going to be part of what you want to discuss? Yeah.
That is part of what I want to discuss. Yeah. I do want to look. I want all Republicans to come together, but we have to be willing to talk. We got to talk out these differences, right? We can't just jump into our own silos. And look, I'm pretty sure you guys have even here, even though you're a Democrat state, you may have a Republican Party, but you may have some that are more, maybe more left leaning than others, or maybe more right than others. And at the end of the day, if we can't get in the room and talk these issues out, then we're never going to have any resolution to any of this. And I think we can all agree that saving our country and at least preparing our country for the next generation to follow us is probably the most important of the greatest experience that we have before us right now, is just to be able to build a right system to where our kids, our grandkids will be able to benefit after we're gone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. It's just so scary, the times that we're in right now. You're starting to see, lots of trains that are purposely or accidentally, however you want to call it, falling over and poisoning our waters. And then, we're seeing, our presidential leader falling downstairs every other day. And I mean, we're just the laughing stock. We used to be the pillar. We used to be the beacon of light for the world. And now we're the laughing stock. It's just disturbing.
That's it. I mean, look, I would say, guys, we gotta paint this picture. I mean, I listen to, Republicans talk all the time. We talk about how the Democrats are stealing from this. They're stealing. But I'm like, guys, you know what? When we in charge, we don't pass the policies. We need to protect our own interests. Why aren't we addressing that when we got the presidency, the House, and the Senate? Why aren't we taking care of business? Right. That's the case. But I think this was the eye opener, right? We needed the Biden situation. Just like there was a need for President Trump America was ready for Trump because of Obama, right?
Yeah.
Now you have Obama and you have Trump in here. Biden is doing so bad that now America is ready to go back to Trump. So we're seeing this pendulum swing. So now Republicans, when we have an opportunity to get everything back, we need to take care of business and pass, legislation that's going to protect us for the future, the foreseeable future, so that we're not constantly, playing this pendulum game and complaining once they win or once whatever happens with the elections. So that's not happening anymore, right? We're taking care of business. We're making sure that we're locking it down. When we got the House, the President, the Senate, there's no way we should be losing anything. I mean, especially because our policies make sense. That for the most part, we got the right leaders in place. Look, I don't think anybody's leaning too far to the Democrat Party because it's just not making sense. It's like this stuff that's rooted in some kind of twilight zone or something. I don't know what it is.
Right. So it sounds like you're definitely a Trump supporter.
Yeah, of course. Look, I'm gonna tell you. Look, I gotta tell you the story. I gotta wait till I get in. Do we have other people getting on?
Wait, well, you might as well get started because you know what? If they're gonna miss out on, well, they can see the replay, but you know what? I'm dying to hear your story because I feel like I have so many questions that you're gonna answer anyway. So, yeah.
Right. Well, look, I'll say okay. So just imagine a kid growing up inner city Houston, Texas. At the time, my community was all anti-government, anti-police, anti-everything at the time, right? This was the ideology. So what you see right now with the BLM movement, that's essentially what I grew up around. There were no white people in my community. There were, all we knew was that the police were bad. And I say that everyone's an advocate until they become a victim. I was one of those same young people that didn't want the police in my community. At the same time, I see that we're being victimized at a higher rate than anywhere else in the country. If you look at the murder rate at the time in the early 90s in Houston, Texas, we were at the top. We had more murders in Houston than we did in LA, and LA had criminal gangs at the time. Yeah. But at the age of 16, my cousin got killed in front of me at her own wedding. At the wedding, the day before her wedding, she got shot and killed in front of the whole family. Everybody saw what that was. But what I gathered from that was that the officers that showed up to take care of my family, they didn't look like me. But they were very respectful. They didn't. Now in this day and age, and I put myself in those officers' predicament, and I'm showing up at that scene, and I see it's chaos. You might well call it. It is what it is. In the inner city, the hood, whatever you want to call it, it's chaos. It's people all over the place. You don't know who is who. I would go in that situation. I'm making everybody get on the ground because I don't know who is who. Right? I'm concerned for my life itself. But those guys didn't come in and they didn't do that. So I always tell people that the most tragic time of my life was also the most impactful time of my life because that was the catalyst that made me want to become a police officer. And I did the most controversial thing anybody could have done at that time for somebody like me was to join the United States Army. And I say controversial because everybody was all anti-government. Nobody believed it. They called me a sellout for going to the Army. But, I thank God every day for the United States Army because I wouldn't be where I'm at today. And I agree with you. That was I'm sorry?
I said, I'm sorry. I said, I agree with you. I did the same thing. If it wasn't for me joining the Army as well, I don't know where I would have been at that time. Yeah.
Amen. Yeah, no, look, I did my 4 years military, did half of my time here in Hawaii. I took college in my off-duty time, but that opened the door for me to become a police officer. So you just imagine this kid that didn't have any experience or any connection to anything. And, I was able to get the job that I wanted, that I had dreamed of becoming since 16 years old. And I was able to become a police officer in Dallas. And, look, 22 years of service with Dallas Police Department. I was an advocate in the community for police officers and the widows. For a lot of my friends died in the line of duty. That's kind of what got me tied to supporting and starting the Fallen Officer Foundation was because a lot of my friends died in the line of duty. And I remember after one of the police officers got killed in a tragic incident, his wife, look, we're police. We do things completely different than most others. His wife didn't have access to any of his money. And I remember, we had to do barbecues and different stuff to try to raise money just so she can buy clothes to prepare for the funeral. A lot of people think that the agencies do that. The agencies do great funerals, but they don't prepare for the things that go with having to bury an officer, which is, like I said, the repast, family coming in, preparing, buying clothes for having the widow prepare, those type of things. And, we were able to do it. And she told me, she said, it would be great to have an organization that supports families after an officer passes in the line of duty, that can step in the immediate aftermath. And that was like the catalyst. She like I said, one of the ladies got it started and, got me going with it. And I've been at it ever since. So that advocacy kind of opened the door for a lot of other things to happen. You fast forward to the shooting attack, 2016, Dallas, Texas, where 5 police officers got shot. I was a sergeant at the time, but I was over the relief effort. So if you think about it, I saw this wave. Obviously, I was working on my doctoral dissertation at the time, and my dissertation was about mitigating the outcomes of shooting attacks on school and college campuses. So I wanted, I was looking at what was this dynamic that was making all these mass shootings happen around the country. And what I saw was a lot of young people being radicalized. And where were those young people being radicalized at? They were on college campuses. And as I started looking into the research, I know now you hear a lot of people talking about it, but I started looking into the research and I saw that Black Lives Matter was like the biggest influencer, right? It was influencing a lot of this. We saw it first emerge like around 2012, but it couldn't quite catch the steam that it needed. But what I did see at that time, that those groups understood how to use social media when nobody else did. I think that's where law enforcement failed, because we didn't have any idea what was going on. And then you have Ferguson. The Ferguson happens, and when Ferguson hit, it was like a fire was lit, right? That was law enforcement was definitely not prepared for it. And I saw the wave. So I was working on my research, and the company that I worked with out of New York was giving me the intelligence data. So I was kind of seeing that, I was seeing these trends online and what was causing a lot of young people to be radicalized to, attack law enforcement, to attack government. And I was going to agencies, I was going to our political leaders, and I'm trying to, hey guys, this is what's going on. This is what you need to do to prepare. And man, we just couldn't catch it. I saw Dallas coming before Dallas even hit us. I was warning people that the protest that was being set up in Dallas, it was being set up by the Black church. And I was letting them know that, look, there's a great potential for something to happen here, because you had groups like, you had Louis Farrakhan, you had, he actually the day before the attack, he made some comments about attacking law enforcement, and that really took off. It was like you can see that if you follow the algorithm, you can kind of see the uptick in that in what was happening. And anyway, make a long story short, a lot of people talk about George Soros, but through my research, I understood that it was the Open Society Foundation that was giving the money to Black Lives Matter Foundation. So when you hear people talk about it now, I just think it's not really comical, but like, guys, I was, when I was saying this back then, y'all was thinking I was crazy. You know what I'm saying?
Right?
Like,
yeah.
But that was the reality. It was, you follow the money, you'll find all those trails. You'll figure out what was happening.
But isn't George Soros affiliated with that organization as well?
Yeah, he's the founder. Yeah. He's the founder of the Open Society Foundation. So that's where, if you look at where Black Lives Matter started getting their money from, that was like one of the first big funders of the movement. And look, they took control over social media. They understood how things were happening. I mean, they understood how to work the back end. And we still, to this day, law enforcement still hadn't caught up. And what we do know from a law enforcement perspective, we can't really fix it, because the ACLU has fought, law enforcement being proactive in trying to stop these radicalized trends. So it's a catch-22 that we've been up against. So make a long story short, the shooting attack happens in Dallas. 5 of my friends get killed. I'm responsible for the relief effort. Look, I had to be at the hospital when officers were coming in, and it was like a war zone. It was something I would hope that no other city ever has to experience. Nobody should ever have to witness such a situation. And you know, look, it was bad, and you got to remember, I'm going through a lot of our political leaders at the time. I'm just, you know, I'm a police officer, but you know, I'm Trey Penny. You know, I come in, I speak with who I need to talk to, right?
Yeah.
But you know, it was like, but these guys were afraid to go after the narrative because, you know, Black Lives Matter, they were clever. They were creative in understanding that if you were Black, you were going to attack Black Lives Matter because they were going to say you were a sellout. And if you were white, you damn sure wasn't going to say you were against Black Lives Matter because, you know, they going to say you were racist. So it was a catch-22. People were afraid of it. And law enforcement was caught in the middle. So the shooting attack happens, you know, nobody would touch it. I filed a federal lawsuit against Black Lives Matter. Then the second lawsuit, 2016, I filed against Facebook, Google, and Twitter for facilitating the attack. You know, like a lot of people didn't understand that these, you know, these groups were allowed to fundraise openly in a public platform, using hashtag like F12, hashtag F12, hashtag ACAB, hashtag kill police, hashtag Black Lives Matter. You know, that the algorithm was proliferating this radical message and encouraging people to attack. That's how they were able to, these groups were able to organize so fast. And by the time law enforcement get there, everything's pretty much tore up. They couldn't get ahead of it because the algorithms were moving faster than law enforcement could stop. You know, the courts, you know, after filing the lawsuits, the courts ended up, there's even today, I mean, there are some issues with causation, right? They don't understand how algorithms work. So the courts at the district level ended up dismissing my case. At that time, I connected with Trump. So 2016 is when I connected with Trump administration. Like I said, I sat on that island for a little while after filing the federal lawsuit against Black Lives Matter. Nobody wanted to touch me. I was I was toxic, right? It was like yeah, anyway, it was the one that was the one that everybody wanted to say, but they couldn't say, they couldn't get behind. And it was amazing. Look, I had I got a call from the Cleveland Police Union, and the president called me and told me that that Rudy Giuliani was coming in and he wanted to meet with me. So anyway, I flew out to Cleveland and we talked. And at the time, he was a surrogate for President Trump when he was on the campaign trail. And I told him what, you know, anyway, I gave him my research. We understood what was what. And make a long story short, he endorsed me. I endorsed Trump. And, you know, we want to move. You know, it was ever since then, you know, I was connected to the campaign. You know, I was going to give speeches, different things for the White House. I had a lot of access. You know, it was a good time to educate people about what was happening, what they didn't see on the backside.
Yeah.
But you fast forward through that, the lawsuits, like I said, the lawsuits ended up getting dismissed. Recently, we just got another case that was connected to my case was the Gonzalez versus Google, and that was with the young lady out of University of California, Naomi Gonzalez, that had traveled to Seville, France, and she was killed in an ISIS attack. Her parents ended up filing a lawsuit, and so her case was filed right before mine. Hers deals with international terrorism, and my case was domestic terrorism. And you know, her case basically, like I said, both of them were dismissed, and she filed hers in appellate court, filed the appeal in her case, so it went to appellate court, and it was dismissed on the same grounds, causation. And so ultimately, what we ended up doing in November of last year, we asked the U.S. Supreme Court to hear the case, and they accepted it. So in February, I actually wrote an amicus brief in that case. So you get a chance to go look at the amicus brief, you'll kind of see how I'm talking about. And they use a lot of my testimony from the Senate, my Senate Judiciary hearing in July of that year to kind of chronicle how BLM was used to incite violence through social media, like how that whole thing happened. Awesome. And anyway, make a long story short, the U.S. Supreme Court came back this month, in fact, and and basically kicked the case out. Basically said that there was a disconnect between the what's happening in the online world and the real world, and essentially they kicked the case back to U.S. Congress. And you got to think about it. That's why we filed the case to begin with, because Congress refused to revise CBA 230, which is the immunity protection for these companies. And so anyway, look, I can talk about this all day long.
Yeah.
But the reality is, we're more so at risk now than ever before, because these companies are now, they have no social controls. Now there's nothing to make them behave properly. There's nothing to make them take down radicalized content calling for riots or attacks in this country. So essentially, that's what I'm running now for Congress, to make sure that I'm able to protect our American interests.
Oh, that's awesome. Do you mind if I take a couple questions? I have a couple people who have their hands up. So this is Tammy Perkins. She is one of the vice chairs of the Maui County GOP. Go ahead, Tammy.
Hi, Tammy.
Hi there. Hi. I think that part of the problem here is that, nobody's really abiding by their oaths of office, and we're living in a lawless society. And I know here on the island of Maui, it's hard to get these officers to, abide by the Constitution, their oaths. I mean, they really are our last defense for protection, but they, somehow are biased on a per case basis, or, somebody from up above is telling them what they can and cannot do. And that's a direct violation of their oath. That's a direct violation of what this country stands for. And as a sheriff, I'm just, wondering what we could do here on Maui to get our police officers on board with, standing behind the Constitution, because even if we just had that little bit, we could, feel a little bit more safe and secure that they've got our backs, because right now, I mean, with the massive weaponized migration and everything else, I don't know if we can count on them here on Maui. So that's it. Thanks.
No, look, I'm glad you bring that up. Look, that kind of ties me to last October when I spoke to a group out in Chicago, and some of their arguments were essentially the same. But as it relates to community violence, right? The police aren't doing enough. The police aren't showing up. They, we're being murdered in the streets, X, Y, and Z, right? Those are true things that are happening. And at the time, it was about 33 families that had lost kids under the age of 17. And everybody was there to talk about what the police were not doing. The reality was that those officers, and every officer in this country, they're going to take their orders from their leadership. And the leadership, by in most cases, or appointed. Those are people that are either appointed by their city councils. Their in Chicago's case was they have a strong mayor system, so that chief of police is accountable to the mayor, and that mayor, I don't know if you guys remember Lori Lightfoot, but she look, she was not the type of leader that law enforcement should have been accountable to. But that chief, which was our old police chief from Dallas, he ended up going to Chicago. He did exactly what he needed to do to stay in her good grace. And the officers, unfortunately, they had to carry out a lot of his terrible policies. Now, not like he's saying go out and violate people's rights. I mean, I don't think that that's something that shouldn't be happening under any circumstance with any law enforcement officer in this country. And what I tell people, what I always tell people, if you see an officer doing something that's not right, you just going to social media to vent your concern and what you think officers did wrong is not enough. You need to go and file an official complaint, put your name on the complaint, and make sure that investigation is conducted properly. That's how we're able to hold officers accountable for their behavior. Another token is, look, it's important for the community to engage with their officers, right? You have to know. Back in the days when I came on in really the early 2000s, right? Because I came on in 1999, but we had this real idea of community policing where we actually did like beat, what we would be considered a beat cop, where we actually went out and met with people and talked to the community. So when there was a crime or something happened, these people were not hesitant to call us and say, "Hey, Sarge, Sergeant Penny, do you know this is going on?" Or such and such. Give us the information. Now, a lot of people, especially depending on the community, they may not be willing to necessarily put their name on stuff, right? It depends on the culture. Some people don't like snitching or whatever you want to call it. But what we've done is we created mechanisms where you're not necessarily telling, but you're giving us a clue as to what happened, or you're leaving the breadcrumb where we can go pick it up and follow up on it. That's why I encourage the community to try to get to know your officers so they can help you.
Mm-hmm. So in Texas, of course, the biggest question that always have is from your eyes and being there, what is the truth about what's going on with the border?
Oh no, the border's terrible. I mean, there is no there's no truth. What you see in the news is what's really happening.
Yeah.
President Biden, whatever. Look, he has opened the borders, and you know what he did was, I think the one thing that the American people should catch hold to was the first thing he did when he got into office was he took away the remain in Mexico policy. Right? What is the reason for doing that? Right? Mm-hmm. We leave them. We force people to stay in Mexico until we can figure out whether or not they have an asylum claim and the United States could accept them. Okay. Mm-hmm. He took it away. Maybe it was just more than likely it was to spite Trump, right? To say Trump did something good, we're going to take it away. And look at what we had. We had a chaos coming through the border. We have everything coming in, from the human trafficking to the fentanyl. And I talk a lot about the fentanyl coming in through our borders, because a lot of that stuff is being sold online through social media. We have so much. It's almost like, I'm trying to think of the crack epidemic in the early 90s. It was really bad back then, but fentanyl is so dangerous. Where it's like a whole nother level. It's like a whole nother level of with that drug coming in through our major ports, major corridors, highway corridors. It is easy for an entire population to be destroyed because of a drug like fentanyl. And I think with something like that, we got to hold Mexico accountable, right? Mexico has to be held accountable because that drug is being, early on, it was being shipped in from China. What the cartels have done early now is they found a way to reproduce the drug there in Mexico. And we have to find a way to shut that down, hold those the cartels accountable, and do whatever we can to protect the American people. But it's going to start with closing our border. We cannot have an open border the way that it is. Every country was built on their national sovereignty. The United States deserves to have its national sovereignty and protect its own borders.
Absolutely. So you're saying holding Mexico accountable. We know that's not going to happen under this administration. So isn't there anything that the governor of Texas can do more? I know he's tried, but what more can the governor of Texas and the House and the Senate do to make a dent in that, or hold Mexico accountable?
No, I'm gonna tell you what the House and Senate should do. First of all, they should have passed a comprehensive immigration policy. It shouldn't be on the state of Texas to fix this. It should have been on the United States government to fix it. If you think about it, we've been operating the last couple of years through executive orders. Executive orders are dangerous because it doesn't matter what the next president just gonna come in and change it to do whatever they want to do. So if Congress, our leaders, they continue to complain about the same thing over and over again, but they won't pass comprehensive immigration policy. Fix it. Fix the asylum issue. Fix the illegal immigration issue, right? If we're going to do deportation for illegal entry, process it, do it, put it in writing so that once it's law, then there's nothing any president can do, because it's the law. It's the law of the land. And we failed. It's not just recent years. We failed on this front for the last 50 years, to fix this immigration issue. But it's going to come down to Congress seeing what we're seeing now with the mass immigration issues coming across our borders. Now Congress will have to come together and really pass comprehensive immigration reform to lock down our borders and make it so that people that are coming in are actually permitted to come in through a legal process before they're allowed. This catch and release stuff, not going to work. So people come in, give them a court date, and then they disappear. We'll never see them again. And there's nobody actively looking for them, so they're in the country doing what they want to do.
Well, it seems like what you're saying is definitely common sense, in which the majority of Americans in this country believe in, along with a lot of other things that are going on, is basically common sense. And we want our freedoms and, live in dignity, respect, and all that. So if you get in your seat that you're seeking in Congress, how are you, because it seems like there's just a lot of talking heads, how are you going to influence those people to start taking action and putting their money where their mouth is, so to speak?
Hey, look, I'm a person that enjoys policy. I got 3 policies written already. I've been helping other congressional and Senate leaders write policies themselves. Now, the problem is a lot of these guys are afraid. I'm not going to say afraid. I'm going to say they are hesitant to press the button on their own policies because they're afraid or they're concerned about how their party is going to accept it at the time. But the reality is, if you're thinking about protecting our own interests, our own country's interests, we can't worry about how it's being perceived. You put it forward. First of all, let's do the groundwork. You can't put forward something if you have a majority Republican House, right? If you don't even have all your Republican colleagues online, how in the world can you expect to get anything done? So what I want to do, what I would propose do, what I've been doing, is working with both sides. If it's something that's stupid on the Democrat side, then let them explain to you why. Help them explain how your policy will fix their issue. I mean, there may be a disconnect. There's always disconnects. But right now we have everyone operating in silos. The Republicans don't talk to Democrats. Democrats don't talk to Republicans. But in this type of environment where we don't control the Senate, we don't have a majority of the House on the same page, we have Republicans fighting with Republicans, and we're never going to get anything done. Right. The bottom line is we have to be able to get policy done. I'm going to work for the American people. I'm going to work for the interests of the American people. Meaning, I'm going to be caucusing with my colleagues, right? Look, if we don't agree about something, we need to go ahead and get that hashed out before we start pushing it out in front of everybody. But it's going to get pushed out either way. I like to think of myself as a keen negotiator, because I'm gonna get done. It's gonna get done one way or the other.
That's awesome. That's what we need, is more patriots and more fighters in there. I know that we don't have much time left with you. I mean, we could go on forever, but a lot of the things that I also hear that I think is important, and I try to get some advice. The fear of everybody is that we're losing our country in 2024, as I mentioned before. And some people are not, there's some good people who don't feel like they want to run. Well, especially in Hawaii, because they don't feel that they're going to get a fair election. What can we do? I mean, the most important thing is, like, we can get candidates, but what can we do now to ensure that we have a fair election and people feel secure in running?
Well, infrastructure. Look, I faced that in the first time I ran for Congress, right? I ran for Congress in a district that I patrolled for about 10 years of my career in law enforcement. A majority minority district, a felony district, high crime, everything you think about it, right? But because I knew a lot of people, I ran, and I got 18% of the vote. Now you probably look at it like, oh man, 18%, that's nothing. Yeah, and that district is definitely something. It was a heavy Democrat district. But the reality is I didn't have infrastructure, right? This was me using my relationships to pull people out to support me. You know, I don't know how your layout is here, but it's obviously you guys have a heavy Democrat district. So the same way the Democrats are caucusing and you know getting people on board with voting for them is what the Republicans have to do. You guys have to get into all these communities and look, start community by community, one community at a time, making sure that they understand your policies, making sure that look, I'm a pragmatist, I'm a common sense kind of guy. You know, I don't like the nonsense. If you can't back it up with research, don't even bring it my way. You know, I think that's how we gotta give people that information. You know, we can't. Unfortunately, they watch CNN all day long, and CNN every day, everything they they hear is the Republicans are bad, Republicans are the devil. But when they have an opportunity to see real Republicans that may be their neighbor, live right next door to them, that can talk to them about real life and how things are you know, how these bad policies are going to impact their own lives, then it'll make a little bit more sense to them. You can't give away money you don't have. Hawaii, look, I'm complaining earlier today. I went to a Mexican restaurant right across the street and spent $60 on a few tacos.
Yeah.
Man, I don't know how y'all survive.
Yeah, it's hard.
But I say that to say that the average individual, you know, Hawaii has been this liberal-minded state for a long time, and what we do know is that giving out free handouts is not going to fly, especially when the average American is trying to work just to survive. So I think you give people common sense policy, hit them community by community, build the infrastructure, your candidates will do well.
Thank you. Just one more. Would anybody like to ask a question before we do closing thoughts? Don't be shy. No? Okay.
Guys, y'all got me here. Come on now. Look, controversy sells. I believe it. I really believe it. I truly believe it. And I'm not afraid to fight anybody. You know, when you think about what I was up against in 2016, what I didn't tell you guys, you know, we hear a lot of people talking about defund the FBI, this type of thing, right? So after the shooting attack happened in Dallas, you know, I took this hardline position. And I didn't even have the police department that wanted to, you know, they didn't want to get anywhere close to it. We had just lost multiple police officers, but I was getting death threats at my job. People were sending letters to my job. They were, you know, posting on social media, go meet Sergeant Penny at his location, like posting my home address, my work address online, right? It was so bad to where the FBI had to come out and talk to me and my family, right? You know, that was my reality. They had to come out and talk to us. We had just lost 5 officers, domestic terrorist attack and on American soil. We couldn't believe it. But you know what I say that to say that I took this position without considering the impact on my family. And after it happened, my family packed up and left. They left. You know, it was too much. My wife could not believe that my wife, you know, my kids were young at the time, right? So, you know, for her, it was about protecting her kids, protecting my daughter. So she packed the kids up and left. And I just say, I say I want people to understand that being thank God I got my family back, right? But being a principled conservative, right? We have to understand. I think when we make these decisions, it might be a good idea to run them by your significant other before you you take those hardline positions. But no, I really believe what I was doing. So when I say I sat on that island by myself, I did it because I really believed in what I was doing, and I was fighting for the interests of every officer, not just my friends, the guys that I fought alongside, that I worked alongside all those years, you know, and to this day have great relationships with their wives and do events for them throughout the year. But I want to make sure that no other agency have to go through those type of things. So I think the controversy is well founded.
So we do have one more question. Go ahead, Tammy.
I'm just wondering, if if we know that we're living kind of in a lawless world right now, if you have a fellow congressperson or someone that you're working with that is violating their oath and their constitution, what would you do about that? What can you do about that? That's my question to you.
Yeah, no, look, a lot of that stuff is happening right now, and I would be challenging those individuals, especially where I think they've crossed the line with something, right? If it's something that I think poses a danger to our national security interests. Look, when I testified before Congress, you guys go look at the video. When I testified before Senate Judiciary, I talked about how the rhetoric of our leaders, what our leaders were saying, that were inciting violence against law enforcement. And the problem is, we have domestic terrorism policy on the books, right? 18 U.S.C. 2331. It talks about what domestic terrorism is. The problem is, a lot of people couch that with freedom of speech and all that kind of stuff, right? There's no protection for hate speech. There's no protection. If you go look at Jablanski versus New Hampshire 1941 Supreme Court case, it talks about fighting words not being protected. And my thing is, there are no penalties for violating domestic terrorism law. So if I'm in office, I'm pressing for those penalties to be added. I want there to be penalties associated with violating this behavior. And if our leaders, or any leader, I don't care who it is, if they're facilitating that type of attack on our American interests, and they violate this policy, then use the policy to hold them accountable. And there's a couple of congressmen right now, I think, that are very irresponsible in their rhetoric, that are subjecting our country to unnecessary risk, that I think should be prosecuted for domestic terrorist behavior.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. I think, I wish you well in your campaign. I think that you should come over to Hawaii and run, maybe. But I wish you lots of luck. And help get this country back to where it needs to be. So with that being said, if you make a closing statement and how people can support you and how they can contact you.
Yes. Okay, guys. Look, none of these elections can be won without fundraising monies, right? It's not about the man. Look, I got great messages, right? I've been meeting with these same congressional leaders, giving them my ideas to create policy for the last 3 years. Okay, we are still stagnant, and I can have all the greatest ideas in the world, but it does no difference. Makes no difference if I can't get in front of people, and which is why I ask everyone to go to my website, support me. Any amount is fine. Because at the end of the day, I have to show that I'm a real force. I got to show that all the relationships that I've established across the country, they mean something. People respect me. They respect that I am able to bring a common sense approach to a lot of our policies. And the only way I can do that is to have support and for people to get behind me. So I encourage you to go to Penny for Congress, www.pennie for Congress.com, and support me. Feel free to call me. My number's on the website. That's my real number. I got them both routed to the same line. So look, I look forward to hearing from you guys. Feel free to call me. I'm always accessible. I think I'll be the same type of leader being in office. I'm not one of these guys that want to push you off to a staffer or something. I think if it's something that's legitimate that needs to be addressed, I'm going to address it. I'm a real person, and I want people to understand that I come from real stock. I come from real people that have been through real experiences, and those real experiences have to relate to our policy. We got to be able to have people that understand how the real world works and the problems that the American people are experiencing in order to fix it.
Thank you. Really appreciate what you're doing, and thank you for your service. I was just thinking, I don't know if you've heard this before, but I would make a catchphrase: Penny makes sense. Get it?
I love that. Penny makes sense.
You can use it. Thank you so much. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your trip, and blessings to your family.
Amen. Thank y'all so much.
Honey. It's one of the greatest gifts to man. With millions of wildflowers in every bottle, the nourishing power of honey is still yet to be fully discovered. Be Nourished Healing Products combines healing ingredients from around the planet to the purest honey from the island of Maui to bring magic to your taste buds. The best honey from the most beautiful place to nourish your body, mind, and soul. From our hearts to yours, be nourished.
Aloha, everyone. Well, I really hope that you enjoyed that session with Dr. Trey Penny, and feel free to reach out to him. We look forward to having him back again and maybe traveling out to Texas to do a one-on-one in person with him. I think that would just be awesome. So just remember to tune in every Thursday at 3 p.m. Hawaii Standard Time on the Liberty Rise media platform on Rumble, YouTube, Red Pill, and Facebook. Please join us next week as we rescheduled. So we're hoping that we'll see Steve Stern for sure next week. And we look forward to hearing about his recent summit that he just had, the Precinct Committee Man project, and his experiences with Steve Bannon, of course, with Donald Trump. Again, please reach out to me at rightisred@pm.me for questions, content, and video clips. But it's been a lot of fun working on all these projects, and I really appreciate all of you joining us. And just remember, everyone, truth has no fear.